Alright, folks, so it looks like it has finally happened. That thing being Cenk Uygur endorsing Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. Now, as you guys know, Cenk did indeed endorse Bernie in the previous election cycle back in 2016. He was supporting Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, of course. TYT was big on Bernie back in 2016. But he seemed to be taking quite a bit of time this time around to really decide who his candidate was. And the reason for that is sort of some speculation you could have, and we're certainly going to speculate a bit here. But I also have to say that I said something that I've now thought about and kind of want to discuss and say I've kind of changed my mind on that tune. But he endorsed Bernie Sanders over Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren has been under very hot water from progressives over just the past couple of days to a week. There have been a bunch of clips, whether it was the Amy Goodman interview or her response to Bill Gates as opposed to Bernie's, and just, there was even, Warren's basically, just being less progressive. She said that she's just a player in the game. That was a big thing that a lot of people took issue with. But I think if you sort of just looked at Bernie and Warren's response to Bill Gates side to side, I think it really tells you, who they are. And so we'll get into some of the speculation here in a second, but go ahead and let's hear it out.
And gave tough but fair interviews. And we don't do company endorsements at the Young Turks. All of our hosts have different opinions. Our reporters do objective journalism, and I'm incredibly proud of them. But the hosts get to endorse whoever they want. So I'm going to do an endorsement today. So I want to tell you guys, if for those of you who suspected that I love Elizabeth Warren, it's true, I do. I think she's fantastic. I think she's smart, strategic, incredibly progressive. I think she's done minor miracles like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She did that when she wasn't even a senator, and to this day, that is a work of wonder that she could get that past Republicans and Democrats who are both opposed to it. And we have the great honor of having two giant progressives in this race. Having said that, I endorse Bernie Sanders. So why? I'm gonna get back to that picture in a second because I think that it's relevant. I wanna get to it at the end. So first of all, on Bernie. Yes, he is slightly more progressive than Elizabeth Warren, and different people have different opinions on how much more progressive. I think their policies are very similar, and I trust both of them to be true progressives, and I think they've both proven that over and over again. But there are two other factors that are very, very important. I think the right tack is revolution, not reform. And by revolution, I mean a political.
So what you hear here from Cenk basically is him explaining that, we got two giant progressives here in the race. That is what we have going. Now, of course, the issue that I've taken with a lot of people who are taking this line, and I've got a sort of nuanced take on this, okay? And that is that I would not describe Elizabeth Warren as slightly less progressive or Bernie slightly more progressive than Elizabeth Warren. Certainly, nor would I, categorize the two as both who are going to be true progressives. I do have some real doubt as to whether or not Warren's going to push M4A as president if she were to be president. I really do have some pretty serious, worries about that. Like, I'm not confident that Elizabeth Warren will truly fight for Medicare for all when she's president. I really don't. I simply am not confident in that. I don't have the confidence in that. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, that dude's been fighting for that for decades. So obviously he's going to fight for it, and that's the guy I trust, and that's what makes Bernie so unique. But at the same time, the other side of the coin there that you're looking at is, will I be mad if Elizabeth Warren ends up being the nominee? I will vote for Elizabeth Warren, and I'm in California, so that says a lot. I'll vote for Elizabeth Warren, and I won't do it, with hesitation. I'll still be good with voting for Warren. That takes two things into account, one of them being that, she's, what I would say is like a decent to maybe good candidate. But once you take into account the opposition, which is Donald Trump, then you realize like, oh man, she's like, pretty much a goddess, in comparison to Donald Trump, right? So at that point, I mean, it's just like you'd have to be kind of a spoiled brat to not vote for Elizabeth Warren at that point, is my opinion on that. Now, the question becomes, okay, you know, why did Cenk take so long? Now, that was the question that I posed, because I was like, man, why hasn't Cenk Uygur endorsed Bernie yet? Like, come on, dude, this is not a tough decision. And I guess him and Kyle had a debate about Bernie versus Warren and yada, yada, yada. But I've really got to tell you that I've kind of changed my mind on that, because when I sent out a tweet about that on Twitter, people were responding with basically saying, oh, I'm glad he waited it out. It added more weight to the endorsement. Now, how much weight does Cenk's endorsement hold? You know, probably not anything crazy. You know, maybe it's something. But I do see where that could come from, and I don't really see any harm in the endorsement coming out now. I do see that, you know, it does have more weight, whatever weight it would have previously had if it was done earlier. I think, yeah, it probably would have had less weight if it were done earlier. So I understand that, and I'm gonna take that too. And so I'm okay with the timing of this. I'm genuinely okay with it. I think that the timing is fine. But why he waited this long? I think that he genuinely has a pretty, like, you know, large affinity for Elizabeth Warren. I think he honestly is more in line with Elizabeth Warren when it comes to ideology. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, Cenk lives like a capitalist every day, bro. Like, he's a capitalist dude. He's the owner of a business, you know? The business has like 50 to 100 employees or something like that. You know, this guy is he's a business guy. So he's a capitalist progressive. So, you know, I see that. And Bernie's a capitalist too, you know, but not in the same way, obviously, you know. As Elizabeth Warren said herself, she's just a player in the game, okay? So, what you're looking at here is something else interesting that we actually got to look at. This was actually much more surprising than anything else. I certainly did not think that Bernie was going to respond, but Bernie sent this out on Twitter. Now, to be fair, I don't know if this is actually Bernie, now that I think of it. I don't know if it's like Bernie behind the Twitter handle sending this out, but, you know, he quote tweeted the TYT tweet saying Cenk Uygur has officially endorsed Bernie Sanders for president on TYT Live. He said, thank you, Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur, for your support. Our movement is growing stronger every day, and together we are going to bring millions of people into the political process and complete the work we started. Now, Anna also endorsed Bernie Sanders, but I believe Anna had already, I recall she had already endorsed, this is like the official endorsement of Bernie, but she had already basically identified Bernie as like, Bernie's my candidate, he's better than Warren, and so she had already endorsed Anna, so she was actually a bit ahead of the game in terms of Cenk Uygur on that one. But this is good, okay, this is actually good. And I wouldn't underestimate the sort of weight of Cenk and Anna endorsing Bernie Sanders. And I really say that simply for the fact that, you know, I would say that they fostered some people who could, an environment on their channel where it very quite feasibly could have Elizabeth Warren supporters or, you know, just people who are sort of anti-Trump, you know? Because they seem to focus a lot on anti-Trump content, which is fine, obviously. But, you know, that's going to foster an environment where people who are like Warren supporters, for example, are going to be there. So that means that there's an environment where there are Warren supporters which can be converted by means of endorsement. So that's good. It's good that hopefully there's some people who are Warren supporters, or any other supporters for that matter, who will be hopefully converted into supporting Bernie Sanders. It's also very good that Bernie is, you know, going out of his way, whether or not it's his staffer, whoever. I doubt it's him actually behind the Twitter account, but whoever it is, it's definitely a good look. It's definitely a good look to, you know, do like a public thank you shout out. You know, this is definitely a very good, smart thing to do. Just good networking. And I think Bernie has done a pretty darn good job this time around, especially with really sort of you know, being everywhere. You know, he's kind of been everywhere. He was on Kyle's show for that. He was on JRE. You know, he's already been on the Majority Report a couple times, but he was on for like the second or third time, you know, not too long ago, although I don't recall exactly when that was, to be fair. and he's been doing a lot, going on TYT, etc., etc. So I think that this is a good look, and I think that ultimately this is a good move by Cenk and Anna, of course, to endorse Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is the better candidate for sure. I would say that Bernie Sanders is a solid amount more progressive, like a reasonable amount more progressive than Elizabeth Warren. But the other end of that coin, the other side of that coin, I will not be angry if I have to vote for Elizabeth Warren in the general election. I won't be, unless Bernie gets cheated, obviously, by the second round, the super delegates kick in. That'd be the only way. But I'm not going to be angry if I have to vote for Elizabeth Warren, just quite frankly, because Elizabeth Warren is obviously better than the Republicans, obviously, but she's a lot better than a lot of the other Democratic candidates, and she's decent to good, maybe borderline pretty good, maybe. But is she going to fight for Bernie for the progressive policies the same way or the same policies? I have to tell you, folks, I don't think she will, fight for M4A, for example. Her foreign policy doesn't seem to be very great either, so that's concerning as well. But a lot of the stuff that she supports, I think she will sort of fight for, as well as I think she will try to champion, like free college for, the way that she has it set up, which would help a lot of people, obviously. So that's kind of my full breakdown of this, but I do want to know your thoughts on this down below. Definitely make sure to let me know.